A newly appointed police chief decided to enter his own precinct undercover, hoping to catch a glimpse of the unfiltered reality behind the badge. However, a white officer, mistaking him for an outsider, spat in his face, convinced he was just a nobody. What followed was a shocking revelation that would shake the entire room. It was a humid Tuesday morning in August when Richard Nelson, the freshly appointed police chief, stepped out of his car in Blue Ridge, a small city nestled in the rolling hills of North Carolina. Dressed in a simple plaid shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers, Richard intentionally obscured his position, a man with 2 decades of experience in law enforcement. Richard believed in understanding his team from the ground up, not through polished meetings or rehearsed greetings. As a black man stepping into a leadership role in a precinct marred by whispers of misconduct, he sought to witness the unfiltered truth. Blending in seemed the best way to achieve that. The precinct's parking lot buzzed with officers coming and going. Richard scanned the area, noting the casual banter and indifferent glances. No one recognized him. His appointment had been announced only days ago, and his arrival wasn't meant to be public until the official inspection later that morning. Adjusting his baseball cap, Richard took a steadying breath, the weight of his mission pressing heavily on him. Inside, the atmosphere was a mix of casual conversation and ringing phones. Fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare on the polished floors, and the smell of stale coffee hung heavy in the air. Richard moved slowly, observing the dynamic groups of officers gathered, some engrossed in paperwork, others swapping stories. A sharp voice snapped through the air, "Hey, you!" Richard turned to see a white officer striding toward him, a smug grin on his face. The officer's badge read Daniels. A few other officers leaned against the wall, watching with curiosity. "Lost? This isn't a shelter," Daniels sneered. "Take that mess somewhere else." Richard's jaw tightened. For a moment, he considered revealing his identity, but curiosity held him back. Daniels stepped closer, his voice rising. "Didn't you hear me? Get out. We don't need people like you hanging around." Laughter erupted from the onlookers. Before Richard could respond, Daniels spat in his face, a warm, humiliating insult that left the room roaring with laughter. One officer slapped a desk, another muttered a crude comment about keeping the riffraff out. Richard wiped his face slowly with a handkerchief, his movements deliberate. "Is this how you treat everyone who walks through these doors?" he asked, his voice steady. "Only the ones who don't belong," Daniels replied smugly. Richard said nothing more, turning away from the laughter echoing behind him. As he made his way to the precinct's main office, an intercom crackled, summoning all personnel to the briefing room. The room filled quickly, officers carrying coffee mugs, joking quietly. Daniels leaned against the wall, his confidence unshaken. Captain Harris, a stout man with a graying mustache, called for attention. "All right, settle down. We've got an important introduction," Harris began. "As most of you know, Chief Caldwell retired last month. Today, I'm pleased to introduce his replacement, a leader with an impressive record." Richard stepped forward, placing a folder with the precinct's seal on the lectern. The room fell silent. Daniel's smirk faltered as realization dawned. Officers exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering nervously. "Good morning," Richard began, his voice steady. "My name is Richard Nelson, and as of today, I am your new chief of police." The silence was suffocating. Daniel's face drained of color. Richard's gaze held his for a moment longer than necessary before sweeping across the room. "This morning, I arrived in plain clothes to see this department through an unfiltered lens," Richard continued. "What I witnessed was eye-opening." A murmur ran through the crowd. Richard raised a hand, silencing it. "I've already seen behavior that is not just unprofessional but disgraceful. Let me make it clear, the culture that has been allowed to fester here ends today." Richard's words hung heavy. Daniels shifted, his bravado completely dissolved. "Respect is not optional," Richard said firmly. "Without it, we fail each other and the community we serve." Richard's gaze fell back on Daniels. "Officer Daniels, this morning you demonstrated exactly what is broken in this department. When you spat in my face, it wasn't just me you disrespected, it was the badge, the oath, and the community." Daniels stammered, "Chief, I didn't know." "That's the problem," Richard interrupted. "You didn't care to know. You didn't think because you assumed the man before you didn't matter. That assumption is why this department has lost trust." Richard's gaze swept the room once more. "This isn't just about one mistake, it's a culture of indifference and prejudice, and it stops now." He concluded with finality, "Effective immediately, Officer Daniels is suspended, pending an internal investigation. If you think this is a mere slap on the wrist, think again, this is the beginning of real change." The room buzzed with stunned silence. Officers averted their eyes, the weight of accountability settling in. As Richard left the podium, he knew the path ahead would be long and fraught, but he had made his stance clear. Real change had begun.